I like silly looking vehicles, I really do, but maybe even more than that, I like silly looking vehicles that are still dead serious about the jobs they are built to do. And that's why I absolutely adore that Land Rover Defender parked behind me, because both in spite of that absurdly long overhang in the back and as a direct result of it, this behemoth is brimming with all kinds of capability for whatever you and your family can throw at it. And it can do it all while being just a little bit silly. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Okay, look, the Defender 130 isn't that weird, but it also isn't the most conventional looking vehicle on the market. It's strange in the same sort of way as the two-door Defender 90, only that thing is short and stubby, and this thing is hilariously long. Now, it rides on the same wheelbase as the Defender 110, but that means all the extra sheet metal and glass is behind the back wheels. And to give you guys a little bit of context, the Chevrolet Tahoe and Suburban, they're basically the same vehicle in two sizes. The same goes for the GMC Yukon and Yukon XL, as well as the Cadillac Escalade and Escalade ESV. But with those, you're getting longer vehicles as well as longer wheelbases when you step up to the bigger versions. The same goes with the Jeep Grand Cherokee. There's an L version that's longer, and it also has a longer wheelbase, so it doesn't stand out quite as much as this thing. Anyways, the good news is all the extra length means there is more space in here for both people and stuff, although it isn't perfect, starting with the cargo area. Because when you fold the third row, there's this big hump back here. The seats don't fold flat with the floor. There is a way to solve that, and that is with this accessory cargo tray that actually goes flat with the load floor and gives you some underfloor storage as well, but it means there isn't as much upright space as there would be if the seats themselves folded completely flat instead of being raised up a few inches. Anyways, just like every other Defender, the 130 has a swing out tailgate, which is unquestionably cool, but it could get a little awkward if you're parked in tight confines. Getting back to that Defender 90 for just a second, it has to be the most conventionally capable of the three that you can buy. But don't forget, this is still a Land Rover, and that means it'll go just about anywhere you want to take it. But don't forget, that big rear end, it means the departure angle is nowhere near as good as the Defender 90s or the Defender 110s. You're giving up about 14 degrees, and that is significant for the stuff you might want to climb on or off of. And before you get too critical, know that yes, people really do take their Defenders off-road. It isn't just some sort of mall crawler or any other luxurious vehicle that can go four-wheeling but doesn't. Land Rovers exist for that very reason. There's a reason this brand still builds such capable vehicles. Now, I know in some markets you can get a Defender on coil springs on a conventional suspension, but every one of them in Canada rides on adaptive air suspension that's also height adjustable, and it means you can lower it right down if you want to make it easier to get in and out, or you can jack it right up to maximize the obstacles that this thing can clear. And let me tell you, it can do that with ease. Now, something that's sort of unique is the all-wheel drive system, because yes, it is all-wheel drive, not four-wheel drive. It's fully automatic, but there's also a low range selection. So if you need a bit more crawling ability, you can just use this button down here, select low range, and it'll give you that lower gear ratio for the all-wheel drive system. Of course, there's all kinds of different drive modes that are tailored to different terrains as well. Now, when it comes to what's under the hood, there are three different choices in North America. There are a couple 6-cylinders, and then there is this one, the P500. It is a supercharged 5-liter V8 that makes 493 horsepower and 450 pound-feet of torque, and it sounds phenomenal, and it also absolutely boogies. Now look, the reality is you don't need this kind of output, but it is cool It's nice to have. And unlike turbocharged power, you don't have to wait to get over that initial turbo lag because a supercharger like this one is belt driven. All that extra output is there to help when you're getting over obstacles, or even if you just want to have a little bit of fun or get around slower traffic. But here is the issue. This thing is not very efficient. It's officially rated for about 15 liters per 100 kilometers, and that ain't good. And after cruising around today, I'm up at around 16 and a half. And don't forget, that is premium grade gas. That to me is just brutal. I know I wouldn't want to stomach that extra price of premium, but I guess it comes with the territory. But I do have to say, there's something I find very frustrating. And no, this isn't just me complaining that Land Rover didn't make my job easier. It's the inconsistency of what's very important information, like fuel consumption, because if you go on the Land Rover Canada website or the US site, you will not find any information, and ditto the Natural Resources Canada Fuel Consumption Guide. There is nothing for the 2025 Land Rover Defender 130. With this V8 engine, you'd have no idea how much gas it's supposed to burn. Now, if you look at the 2024 Defender 130 P500, it says it's going to burn 15 liters per 100 kilometers. But if you go on the US EPA site, that says it should be good for the equivalent of 14.7 liters per 100 kilometers, and it doesn't stop there, because if you look at cargo room, if you look at the Canadian site, it says 290 liters behind the third row, but if you look at the US site, it says something like 433 liters, and then if you look at the spec sheet that I found on the media site, it says 389 liters. Now, in fairness, that spec sheet also says 290, which is the dry volume. And that makes more sense because it's if you fill it with dry cubes, which more accurately represents suitcases or any other sort of luggage you might have in the back. But here is the problem. Since other OEMs use the wet volume, it might take this thing off your shopping list because the dry volume doesn't look as good as the wet volume in a competitor like, I don't know, the Mercedes GLS class. This is all very important stuff, and here's my issue. Not everyone has the time or energy to chase around different specs and try to make sense of them and figure out which ones are accurate and which ones aren't. And it could take a vehicle off your shopping list, or more importantly, keep one on it when it shouldn't be there in the first place. And getting back to that departure angle one last time, if you look at the Canadian and US public-facing sites, it says 25.8 degrees for the Defender 130 in off-road mode. But if you look at that spec sheet on the media site, it says 28.8. I'm telling you right now, this stuff might seem minor, but it matters. Anyway, getting back to how this thing performs out here on the road, I'm sure it doesn't come as any sort of surprise to know that these massive wheels and low profile tires are better suited to the street than they are the trail. But here is what did surprise me, just how smooth this thing is out here on the road over pressure cracks and potholes. Not nearly as disruptive as I thought they were going to be. These are 22s, they are very heavy. All that unsprung weight is going to pull at the suspension, but because these are air springs, it is a lot more gentle. And even when you go over bumps, they are not as rough as you might expect. This thing is very smooth and comfortable, and the same goes with the braking. It's not often that I shed out the brakes in a vehicle, because that's one of those things that they're either good and they don't really warrant mention, or they're bad and they do. But these just bring this thing to a stop so smoothly. They are so well suited to the vehicle, so it doesn't feel too big, but it also doesn't mean that they betray the size and the weight of it. It feels exactly how it should as you're slowing down, and it makes it easy to judge your speed and how quickly and how firmly you need to get on the brakes, especially in an emergency situation. Now, because this is a modern Land Rover, yes, it's capable, but it's also luxurious, so it is filled with all kinds of amenities. But I hope you are sitting down before we get to the asking price. And yes, it's capable. Yes, it's comfortable. And yes, it is spacious, but it is also expensive. You're looking at about 147 grand before extras for this Defender 130 P500 that I'm driving. This one's got a whole bunch of options too. It's about 161.5 grand before tax. And don't forget there's luxury tax on top of that too. All right, before we get to this interface, I do want to talk about some of the stuff that sets this cabin apart. Now, like I said before, this is all about blending capability and luxury. It looks and feels the part of both in here. So you have this very nice leather upholstery, but then there are some rugged touches like these exposed bolts. There's even some sheet metal on the doors here. I really like it because it looks kind of cool, maybe a little bit industrial, but it doesn't take away from that luxurious feeling that you expect at this price point. Now, this interface, I would say there's a bit of a learning curve, not too steep. It's the sort of thing that once you get used to it, it's mostly intuitive. So let's start with these control knobs here. Yes, right now they look like they are temperature controls, but if you press them, well, that's how you adjust either the heat seat or ventilation. But then there are these buttons in between. This one you hit and it turns this side into the fan speed control. And then this one up above, that's how you adjust through the different drive modes. So like I said, it can be just a little bit confusing to get used to, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. The same goes with this gear selector. It's a pistol grip style. Because it's electronic, it's a little bit of a different approach to it, but not too bad. And the infotainment system itself, pretty straightforward. It's got wireless smartphone connectivity, built-in navigation that isn't all that good. More importantly, because this is an off-roader, there are all kinds of cool off-road settings in here. You can even take a look at your pitch and roll angles, your altitude, the air suspension height, the differentials, whether they're locked or open. There are even little kind of tutorials, little instructions on what each different drive mode setting does. That is very cool. There's also a wade sensing page so you can see just how much water you can safely drive through. Now, speaking of driving through water, the Defender is rated to go through about 3 feet of it, which is a lot, but then again, it's only about yay high, and that is with the suspension in its off-road height. And contrary to common belief, this air intake up here, it's not to help it drive through even more water. That's to help the Defender breathe clean air if you're driving through sand and dirt. And I know some of you might think that's a gimmick, but it speaks to just how serious this thing is as an off-roader, even if it is just a little silly looking too.